Hi everybody. All of you continue to share some great posts. And in this week's discussion on challenging the process, there's a recurring theme that to me comes to mind. And that theme is change. Whether that change is a small process or perhaps it's a large-scale social idea, the catalyst for that change is the leader. Getting buy-in from stakeholders, understanding boundaries and having resolve, transparency, honesty, all those qualities, those are some things that you mentioned. I saw that many of you noted and wrote about some school-based contexts, which always serve as a great example to learn lessons from. So keep it up. In this week's reading from the Leadership Challenge, our authors, Kouzes and Posner, they share a couple of concepts. Those are taking initiative and sharing outsight. And outsight is this concept of looking outside your own experience in an almost transcendent or maybe even prescient way. Change, or for us, challenge, is partly achieved through empowering other people. In some of your examples, when that challenge or change occurred, and it came about perhaps suddenly, it had the roots of that sudden change not being sustainable, even to the point of ultimately leaving the organization in a worse position than when that challenge was initiated. In other words, when the challenge or the change happened too fast, it failed. I hope it serves as a great lesson in looking at those examples that fostering communication consistently and creating this culture of an organization that's ready to embrace change is important, so that when the challenge to a process eventually comes about, any sort of change that results from it can stick. I hope that you are beginning to notice, if you haven't already, that these practices of exemplary leadership, well, they're all interrelated. With these first two, challenging the process, it goes hand in hand with modeling the way. If a leader models the way of transparency, of good communication, honesty, etc., then there's a stronger likelihood that any future change or challenge to a process can be adopted and ultimately sustained. Next week, we'll turn our attention to the third practice of exemplary leadership, which I think is the heart of the book, empowerment. So next week in our module, we'll identify what leaders can do to enable their followers to greater productivity and success. We'll also assess organization-level factors that are connected with employee disempowerment. Finally, we'll assess the organization-level factors connected with employee empowerment. We'll also read an interesting article that makes an argument for considering history, specifically the history of an organization being used as a leadership development tool. Perhaps you've heard this idea that's been quoted: those who fail to learn from history are bound to repeat it. And I hope next week we will live that out, or at least study it. I want to briefly comment on your writing on the discussion boards here. This week and last week, I've seen some really good examples of analysis and application in your writing. That is, breaking down ideas into their component parts and then applying those concepts and the ideas to your particular situation. Keep that up. That's great. It's also not too early to start thinking about your first assignment. That will be due at the end of Module 4. So feel free to take a look ahead and see what's upcoming in that module. Because what I typically do is I create a video the week of a paper that's due. That video has tips and expectations for that assignment. So I'll post that on the announcements in due time. For now, and as always, continue to post, discuss, and respond to your colleagues for the remainder of the weekend as you see fit. And with that, I'll see all of you online.